don't fight good and all that other baloney you just mentioned. It's just because that one experience, I don't like them anymore.
Zach doesn't like to be a lightning rod. Okay.
What experience is this?
We'll do the short version. Sean
Okay.
tried to kill me in a thunderstorm.
I fought a sheephead for 20 minutes in the middle of a thunderstorm. Yeah, it was
Oh my gosh.
glorious.
Yeah, it was stupid. Listen to whenever I release the first podcast, listen to the whole story. We detail it.
Yeah.
But I'm not a fan of sheephead anymore.
The other thing I have to mention, and this is part of the experience that has been brought up in the mystery. Last year, I went to a stretch of the Little Scioto that we regularly wade, right there at the Dixon Mill Bridge. And I took my son with me. It's the first time that he had waded big water before. We had several trips down Rocky Fork Creek, but this was the first time I took him to Little Scioto. And we waded down to the big bend where we stop and turn around, and we were headed back upstream. I caught, a nice largemouth and a nice sheephead, and yeah, I caught the sheephead on a Ned rig, and I just plopped it in the water right in front of us. And Lucas, my son, like, his mind was blown. He was like, "Oh my God, that fish was right there. How did that happen?" So we're making our way back. We're finishing up for the day, and there's this long stretch. It's got a rock bottom, and the water's about hip deep. And we saw a few gar swimming around, and there was one that was pretty big, and it got kind of close to us. And Lucas looked at me and he said, "Man, I want to catch that one." I said, "Now, Lucas, you're fishing with an ultralight. You've got 4-pound test, and you're throwing a Roadrunner of all things. Zach's going to be happy about that." I said, "I don't know. Even if you do manage to get that gar to bite, I don't know that you can wrestle that fish anywhere close to us. So, prove me wrong." He makes a cast with the Roadrunner. No sooner than it hits the water, that gar picks it off and takes off, not upstream away from us, not towards the bank, but right at us. It's swimming straight at us like a torpedo, and Lucas, bless his heart, sees this giant prehistoric toothy critter of a fish flying right at him, and throws his fishing pole at me and books it to get out of its way.
Oh my God.
I catch the fishing pole, and I'm juggling my fishing pole and his fishing pole and loosening the drag and fighting this fish. And I fought it, and I reeled it up, and I wore it out, and I got it up to us, and I handed Lucas the fishing pole, and I said, "Here, hold this. I'll try to get your fish so we can take a picture with it." And as I went to pick the fish up out of the water, I got my hands under it, and I brought it up, and it just made it out of the water. It gave one last heroic effort and shot off and broke the line.
Oh.
And I just looked at Lucas, and I said, "Yeah, Bub, I'm sorry. We didn't catch it. After all that, we didn't catch the fish." And he looked at me, and with the dumbest grin on his face, he said, "Told you I could catch it." He had the nerve, after throwing his fishing pole at me, to tell me, "I told you I could catch it."
Oh my gosh.
But
I'll tell you what, Lucas is a trip, man. He comes up with some stuff.
Yeah, he does.
Have you ever heard of people? I've heard of people not even using hooked lures to catch gar. They would take like an old topwater floating bait of some and tie a frayed piece of yarn or a frayed piece of rope on the end of it and bring them in. It gets tangled in their teeth.
Yeah.
I've seen lures that are just a frayed piece of rope. That's it.
Yeah, really.
I've got one better. I have eaten gar, and it's phenomenal.
Well, uh, I have never eaten it, but I know that I have watched people clean it and cook it and everything, and everyone says it's pretty good to eat. So,
Now,
It's a
what's the trick to cleaning the gar? Don't they have a set of Y bones or something in them?
hmm
well, the hardest part about cleaning them is their scales are crazy thick. So, um, fishing buddy Justin, uh, he bow fishes, and he got a couple, and he had to use tin snips to get through their skin and
hmm
scales. And the way he described it, because he cleaned them and cooked them for me, I just happened to be lucky enough to catch him in the mood for a fish fry after he caught them. Um, so you cut through their skin with the tin snips, skin and scales, and you peel it down away from them. And the way that he cleans them is he just takes the back strap, or he calls it a tenderloin,
hmm
um, that is on either side of their spine, and he just follows the spine down and rounds right out along the rib bones, and you get a nice piece of meat. And he just kind of chunked it up and fried it, and it was delicious. There weren't any bones to worry about. It was a nice, clean, white fish. It didn't have a really strong fishy flavor. And the texture was kind of reminiscent of catfish, where catfish is a little more uh, toothsome of a fish.
Hmm.
It was really good. I'd love to do it again.
Well, some of these gar, most of our all of our gar just needle nose gar. Can you imagine? Down south, one of them alligator gars, what that
No,
would be? Well, that. I mean, this ain't got nothing to do with fishing, but those fish down there, those alligator gars, they're so large, and their scales are a lot more tough than what uh, our needle nose gar here is. But in the South, a lot of the Native American tribes actually used to use their scales as arrowhead points for their arrows. That's how strong they are.
I did not know that.
They are exactly shaped like an arrowhead. And they can haft those on. So I've read stories of tribes in those areas that would actually take the scales from an alligator gar, haft them on their arrow shafts, and actually use those to bowfish for the gars, because it was about one of the only things that would go through their armored bodies.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
it is.
I think there's a lot of fish that get a bad rap, though, as far as being bad tasting fish. I've heard some people say that sheephead and carp are really good to eat. Just depends on the time of the year and how you clean them.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've,
I
I've
don't think.
watched several videos about cleaning carp, and to be honest, there's one of two methods that I've seen. One is kind of to follow the same method I just mentioned with the gar, and just to get that back strap of meat. And I've seen others where they take a full fillet, um, alongside the whole side of the fish, um, but they just follow right over top of the rib bones, so they don't get down into any of the organs or anything like that. And I've heard that carp is a delicious fish as well.
Hmm.
Well, I think some of the upscale restaurants are actually starting to catch those Asian big head carps
Hmm.
and actually putting them on their menu.
And I think that's a thing that I could talk about for hours on end. Is the use of the resources that we have in ways that people have never thought of. You know, a, a thing that I'm sure all three of us have done several times is to go mushroom hunting, as we call it. Most people would call it foraging or some other fancy word, but when you're in southern Ohio and you're going traipsing through the woods looking for morel mushrooms, it's mushroom hunting. There's no other thing to call it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's just like deer season or anything. It's mushroom season.
right? Exactly. Um, but the idea that you know there are people out there that have never looked out of doors or away from a grocery store to find something to eat and utilize it in any way just continually blows my mind.
Well, I think Mike has really looked into a lot of that because Mike's really big into the Native American culture. Uh, Mike's got a pretty good point of view on that stuff, I think.
Yeah. There is a lot of things, but I think a lot of reason for people don't actually look at these other resources as food and things is because no one's ever taught them anything. A lot of them haven't had the chance to experience something. I mean, it's just like with my job, like there's a customer of mine that we work for throughout the year, and it blows her mind that she asked me last time. She was like, "So, have you ever ate rabbit?" Yeah, ate a bunch of them. But it's just people haven't had the chance to experience those things, but that we just take for granted a lot of times, because we can do that. We've been taught that. But I think, some people consider some of this fish, junk fish and, like gar and things like that. They're junk fish. I mean, I've seen them, take gar and just throw them on the side of the bank and let them die because they feel like they eat all the other fish and game fish and all this and that. But they're there for a reason, man. They take care of a lot of cleanup and things too.
Oh yeah.
But like the Native Americans, you got a lot of people who uh, freshwater mussels. Okay, our streams, the Scioto and the Ohio are a highly researched bodies of water for freshwater mussels. Now, you ask someone, hey, let's go down here and pick up a bunch of these things. Let's take them home. Let's put them in some clean water for a couple of days, and then we're going to eat them. They're going to look at you like you're crazy. But they'll go down to the South and pay bukus of dollars for, oysters on a half shell. These freshwater mussels around here, and I've ate them, and they're really good. But if you look, just like the Shawnee and Algonquin and different people that's been in this area throughout the years, the Adena and the Hopewell cultures, in West Portsmouth, they dug up an area that was part of a village. One of the main things that they found in their site, they found these caches of areas where they ate and prepared food and where they disposed of the things they didn't eat. Probably the majority of what they ate in here was, the fish from the rivers and streams. But they also found thousands of freshwater mussel shells. That was a big, big staple of their diet. So, yeah, I totally agree that people need to start looking at these resources that we have, do it in a way that, is able to sustain these things. But, Appalachia's got a lot to offer.
Yeah, Zach.
Uh, so does Colorado.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, but you go back to people not taking advantage of these things. We'll take my wife as a prime example. I'm going to go deer and elk hunting this year. I asked her, if I shoot a deer or an elk, are you going to eat it with me? And she gave me the craziest look like, no, I'm not going to eat that with you. And it blows my mind because, deer, elk, freshwater mussels, mushrooms, they're they're food sources that have not been